House to Home, brought to you by Remax Diamond Realty.
Welcome back to the show, everybody, and welcome to House to Home, where we tell you everything you need to know about the real estate market and industry right here on Guam. Now, my friends, real estate can be somewhat complex. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot to know, but I swear, I have the easiest job in the world when we have the lovely talents of Liz and Gina from Remax Diamond Realty. Ladies, welcome back.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, now we're going to talk about zoning today. It's a very important product and a very important topic. But, of course, Liz, when I was talking to you last week, we said we were going to congratulate you on the opening of Remax's third branch. So here are the cake is still cupcake.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so these are for you guys, and we'll get to that later. And hopefully, like we're talking about zoning, we'll work up a proper appetite.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about zoning first, and I guess the easier one would be residential. And a lot of people know that, you know, like if I own a piece of property, you know, it's not exactly a perfect square, and, you know, like there's maybe somebody out there, land management or whoever, decided what is property, and then there's a certain value attached to that. So as far as zoning, what should people need to know?
Well, if you own a piece of property, you want to know what is your zone. And there are different zones, like R1, for example, is residential. R2 is multifamily. We do have a commercial zone, which is C. There's hotel zone, and there's industrial, which is M1, light industrial, and M2 is heavy industrial. So that also determines the value of your property and what you can do with the property. So if you have an agricultural zone and you want to build an apartment building, you can't do that. So it's important for Gina and I, when we entertain clients, whether they're selling or purchasing, we always have to ask preliminary questions about the zoning, what's their intent, because we have to match the right property with them if they're purchasing, or if they plan to sell it, what would that value equate to based on the zone.
Now, Gina, who exactly determines what a zone is? Because I'm thinking, you know, like Liz just said, you know, if you want to do something different with the property outside the definition of its zone, that's a no-no, right? Because I'm thinking like one of our good friends, like with Tita's Goodzerya down in Santa Rita. I mean, it's a beautiful house, and the property's wonderful, and yet it's a fully functional bakery.
Yes, absolutely. And they probably went about getting that, either they got permission to use the house for business use, but that's exactly the reason why we want to talk about zoning, is because zoning is already predetermined. Most properties here already have zoning designated on them from the government, either through legislation or just through the zoning maps that have already been adopted. If you already have a piece of property and there's zoning in place, the reason it's important for you, even if you're not looking at selling, is because what if you decided, like what Liz was mentioning, you want to build an apartment building, you go through Kaiser, Dedido, and parts of that area, you see there's a lot of multi-family units.
Sure.
But that area is all residential zone. So legally, you can only have one single family unit per lot, unless you've already gone to the government and said, listen, I want to do something different with my property. Will you allow me to? Most people believe that, you know, it's their property and they're allowed to do what they want with their property. Yes, to some degree you are, but it's restricted by your zoning. So before you add on that 3 other units, you know, you've got a studio in the back, a 3-bedroom apartment upstairs, and a 2-bedroom on the side, you should check with the government, because what happens is by doing that, the property becomes what's called its illegal use, and you devaluate your property by doing that. And so that's why zoning is so important. It's important for you to know, and if you don't already know what your zoning is, you can go, you can pull out your map, and some maps, some surveyors were really good and they put it on your map what the zoning is. It's on the legend part of the map. But if they didn't do that, go down to land management and request for zone verification.
Okay, now I'm thinking, if someone's entrepreneurial, and say someone comes here and they've got like a bunch of money in the bank already, and they're like, you know, I want to do something cool on this Guam place. The people there are very warm. It's a wonderful place. Now I want to take a look at one of the zoning maps of Guam, and I actually want to build like maybe a little housing community or something like that close to a place that is a commercial or like a commercial zone, because you know, ergo, you know, they're going to pick up the money. You may have like restaurants there. You may do stuff, and you know, it's going to make money. How can people go about doing that?
Well, the first thing we would do, if they wanted to develop a housing tract, we would look for properties that you could subdivide. The question would be, is the infrastructure in place? Is there power? Is there water? Is there sewer? Because, and depending on where it is on the island, for example, if you're further north, there are certain guidelines with how you subdivide your properties. If it's R1 and there's sewer, you could have smaller lots. For example, 461 is a smaller size property. So investors always want to maximize their dollar. They want to get the most property for their investment. And the more lots they can cut it up with, it means more money in the bank. So if we find them a piece of property that's zone R1 and it has sewer, then they could cut it up to those sizes. And then, of course, maximize their investment. Now, if it's difficult to find that and you only have agriculture zone further north that fits what they want, close to the stores, the problem is they're limited. They can only cut that up to half-acre parcels, like 1858 square meters.
And that's regulated.
And that's regulated. So there's regulations for each zone in terms of what they can do with the property.
Now, I'd like to know, and you guys have probably heard this a cajillion times, even if that's even a word, because we here at KUAM, we've done like a bunch of stories on the rezoning efforts of the government with the whole, the property that now holds the Virachi, like right next to to GMH.
Yeah.
If a property or a region is going to be rezoned from like a residential to a commercial or vice versa, how long of a process is that? And again, for someone looking to develop and everything, if they want to say, let's put this as like residential, let's make it commercial now and everything, how long am I looking at while it goes through the process and the paperwork and legislative approval and whatnot?
My goodness, I'd budget a year to a year and a half if you're lucky.
That's not that bad, actually.
It is if you're doing it for the purpose of because you're doing it for business. I mean,
time is money, of course.
Time is money. And the longer you sit there, imagine this is just to change the zoning is what you're talking about. After that, so you really can't do anything until you've either been approved or not approved. Because if you get everything ready as if you've been approved and it's not approved, you've wasted all your plans because you didn't get approved through that process. So we tell people, it's a risk factor. And actually, that's a good point that you're bringing up because, knowing what your zoning is really important. But knowing what's going to be going on in the area is also another factor because if you have it, like Liz mentioned, if it's agricultural zone, but your area has activity going on, like, Barragata Heights across the street where JK, remember for a while, JK Tiles was the only commercial store there other than Besta Market?
Yep.
Well, that area originally was all agricultural zone, so more or less residential use. Now, investors, they took a risk, bought property in the area, went to the process of getting it rezoned, and luckily enough, it was approved. And so now you see commercial activities going on in that whole strip. Up and down that road is all commercial now, but it is a process. It takes a lot of time and money. And so for most people, only investors actually go through that. Some family members also do that. They'll go through the process of getting their properties rezoned.
Now, one thing that you were bringing up, Liz, was industrial zones. And I think I would assume that those are the kind of zones that once they're set, they tend to stay that way because you're talking about a high degree of noise, because a lot of businesses that, you may produce, air pollution to a certain degree and everything like that. They're going to be highly trafficked because
so on Guam, there are already areas designated for, like M1 is light industrial, like Harmon, for example.
I was going to say Harmon Industrial Park.
You'll have Harmon Industrial Park. So you have M1 zone, which is light industrial. If you have M2, it's heavy. Like, for example, the Gorko vicinity in Agate, that's M2 zones. So,
would M2 also be like black construction or like?
Not necessarily M1. Yeah, it depends on where. But in terms of getting them rezoned, for anyone to, let's say, want to do a production plan and they want to put it in a certain area, they have to go through the process. However, that's a little difficult because in order for the government to approve it, they would have to look at what are you building, what are you putting in place, does it affect your neighbors, and they will also give notices to the neighborhood. And if they thumbs down, it's not going to work.
And EPA's got to come in and make sure they do all the
EPA is involved, exactly.
Is there such thing as a school zone?
The school zone.
Schools, by their nature, tend to be places that are quiet. They're kind of like away from. They can be in residential
Yes,
places, but
they
they tend
could
to be
be.
like away
Yes,
from
they
the
could.
Yeah.
away from the industrial at least.
The restriction comes into place if you wanted to create a commercial activity within an area that already has a school, then the restrictions come into play. Like you can't have
a
a mom
bar.
and pop store in that area that sells
Sells
liquor
liquor.
because you're in a school district.
You have
A
to be
school,
500 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there are known
Yeah.
like school zones, and you see
Yes.
them like on the side of the road,
Yeah,
but maybe
yes.
not official. Okay, well, tell you what, we are going to get in the cupcake zone right now. So I know there's, and we
We're
got these from-
celebrating, right?
yeah, we got these from our friends at Infusion, and they make absolutely wonderful cupcakes. So there, so
Thank
Gina
you
has got
so
the
much,
red velvet.
Infusion.
So
Okay.
let's toast.
Yes,
And to
absolutely.
Jason, thank you.
And
Thank
thank you, and to Remax's success and the success of this program. And it's been a real treat working with you, and we look
We
forward to doing
enjoy
so
it.
much more.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
us.
so much.
Okay, and thanks for. Where can people go for more information about zoning while I dive into this cupcake?
They could always check the government website for zoning. They have it
Land
online,
management.
land management. That's
Yeah.
right. They're the governing body with the zoning.
Okay, well, thank you so much, ladies.
Thank
Congratulations
you.
once again. All right, and everybody, thanks so much for watching, and please stay tuned because we'll be back right after this. The cupcakes definitely will not. We're
This
back
is
after
delicious.
It is. These are wonderful.
This is coffee.